I still remember the day I moved into my new apartment like it was yesterday. There's something about starting fresh in a new place that fills you with this mix of excitement and anxiety. I had just graduated college and landed my first real job in the city, which meant I needed to find affordable housing fast. After weeks of searching through endless listings and attending awkward roommate interviews, I finally found a decent two-bedroom apartment that wouldn't completely drain my bank account. The catch? I'd be sharing it with a complete stranger named Alex, who I'd only exchanged a few brief messages with online. The morning of move-in day, I arrived early, hoping to get settled before my new roommate showed up. I wanted to make a good impression, you know? First impressions matter, especially when you're going to be sharing a living space with someone for at least the next year. I had just finished bringing in the last of my boxes when I heard a knock at the door. Taking a deep breath, I walked over and opened it to find possibly the most attractive guy I'd ever seen standing in the hallway with a friendly smile and way too many bags for one person to carry. "Hi, I'm Alex," he said, extending his hand. "You must be Jamie. Sorry I'm a bit late. The traffic was insane." His voice had this warm, slightly raspy quality that immediately put me at ease. He was tall, with dark curly hair that fell just above his eyes, and he was wearing a faded band t-shirt that hinted at good music taste. I immediately felt both relieved and slightly panicked. Relieved because he seemed normal and friendly, panicked because, well, I hadn't expected my roommate to be quite so handsome. "No worries at all," I replied, probably a bit too enthusiastically. "I just got here myself. Do you need help with your stuff?" And that's how our first hour together went, hauling boxes, suitcases, and various pieces of disassembled furniture up 3 flights of stairs because, of course, the elevator was out of service on move-in day. By the time we finished, we were both sweaty, exhausted, and somehow already comfortable enough to collapse on the living room floor among our scattered belongings. The apartment itself was nothing special, just your standard two-bedroom with a modest kitchen, a living room that could barely fit a couch and TV, and a bathroom we'd have to share. But it had good natural light, was within walking distance to a grocery store, and most importantly, it was ours. We spent some time discussing how to arrange the furniture and which kitchen cabinets would belong to whom. These might seem like trivial details, but when you're sharing a space with someone, these little negotiations set the tone for your entire relationship. As we were unpacking, I noticed Alex seemed a bit stressed about something. He kept checking his phone and glancing anxiously at a large, flat cardboard box leaning against the wall in what would be his bedroom. After about an hour of this, he finally turned to me with a slightly embarrassed expression. "So, I have a bit of a situation," he said, running his hand through his hair. "I ordered this bed frame online, and it just arrived yesterday. I was planning to put it together myself, but the instructions look like they were written by someone who's never seen a bed before. Plus, I'm terrible at building things. Would you mind helping me out? I'll order us pizza afterward as a thank you." Let me tell you, there's something uniquely intimate about building furniture with someone you've just met. It's like an immediate crash course in how they handle stress, whether they're patient, if they can follow directions, and most importantly, how they react when things inevitably go wrong. I wasn't exactly an expert furniture assembler myself, but I'd put together enough IKEA pieces in college to feel somewhat confident. "Sure, I'd be happy to help," I told him, secretly relieved to have something specific to do rather than making awkward small talk. But full disclosure, I'm not exactly a master carpenter either. Alex laughed, and the sound made something warm bloom in my chest. It was a genuine laugh, the kind that crinkles the corners of your eyes and reveals your true personality. "That's okay," he said. "Between the two of us, we should be able to figure it out. And if not, I guess I'll be sleeping on the floor tonight." There was something in the way he said it, a hint of vulnerability mixed with humor, that made me determined to get this bed built properly, even if it took all night. We cleared a space in his room and opened the massive box. Inside were dozens of wooden pieces, a bag of hardware that looked like it contained at least 100 different screws and bolts, and a set of instructions that were indeed baffling. The diagrams were tiny, the text was in multiple languages, and several steps seemed to be missing entirely. Alex looked at me with wide eyes, and I couldn't help but laugh at his expression of pure dismay. "Okay, let's approach this systematically," I suggested, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "First, let's lay out all the pieces and identify them based on the parts list. Then we can sort the hardware and take it step by step." Alex nodded gratefully, and we got to work spreading everything across the floor of his bedroom. The next hour was filled with confusion, laughter, and a fair amount of accidental innuendo. "Is this the long screw or the short one?" Alex would ask, and I'd have to bite my lip to keep from making the obvious joke. Or I'd say something like, "This needs to go into that hole," and we'd both start laughing like middle schoolers. It was silly, but it broke the ice in a way that felt natural and comfortable. We hit our first major roadblock when we realized that what the instructions called Part F was nowhere to be found. We searched through all the packaging materials, looked under furniture, and even checked my room in case it had somehow migrated there. After about 20 minutes of increasingly frantic searching, Alex sat down on the floor with a defeated sigh. "Maybe I should just return it and buy something simpler," he said, looking genuinely disappointed. I felt bad for him. Moving is stressful enough without having to deal with missing furniture parts. "Wait, let me look at the diagram again," I said, studying the instructions more carefully. I think Part F might actually be this piece here, but they've labeled it incorrectly in the parts list." I held up a wooden slat that had been labeled as Part K in the packaging. Alex's face lit up. "You're a genius," he exclaimed, jumping to his feet with renewed energy. "Let's try it and see if it fits." And sure enough, it did. The mislabeled part slotted perfectly into place, and suddenly the bed frame started taking shape. As we continued building, our conversation flowed more naturally. I learned that Alex was a graphic designer who had just landed a job at a local marketing firm. He'd moved to the city from a small town about 3 hours away, and this was his first time living away from home except for college. He was close with his family, had a younger sister in high school, and was passionate about photography in his spare time. In return, I told him about my job in publishing, my obsession with true crime podcasts, and my disastrous dating history. "So no boyfriend at the moment?" he asked casually as we struggled to attach the headboard to the frame. I couldn't tell if there was any particular interest behind the question or if he was just making conversation. "No, definitely single," I replied, trying to sound equally casual. "My last relationship ended about 6 months ago. He was nice, but we wanted different things." "What about you?" Alex tightened a bolt before answering. "Single too. I was seeing someone back home, but we broke up when I decided to move here. Long distance rarely works out, you know?" There was a hint of sadness in his voice, but also resolution. Plus, I was excited about starting fresh in a new city, meeting new people. He glanced up at me with a small smile that made my heart do a little flip. The bed was finally starting to look like a bed rather than a pile of random wooden pieces. We had the frame assembled, the slats laid across to support the mattress, and we're just finishing attaching the headboard. It had taken us nearly 3 hours, but the end was in sight. "I think we just need to tighten all these bolts, and then we can put the mattress on," I said, reaching for the Allen wrench. Our hands brushed as Alex reached for it at the same time, and I felt that ridiculous little spark that happens in movies but that I'd always thought was exaggerated. Based on the way Alex quickly pulled his hand back, I wondered if he'd felt it too. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of tightening screws and double-checking our work, the bed frame was complete. Alex's mattress had been leaning against the wall this whole time, still wrapped in plastic from the store. Together, we hoisted it onto the frame, and I helped him put on a set of navy blue sheets and a gray comforter. "Moment of truth," Alex said once the bed was fully made. He looked at me with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. "Should we test it?" Now, let me pause here to clarify something. When someone says test the bed, there are many innocent interpretations of that phrase. You could simply sit on the edge to make sure it doesn't collapse. You could bounce a little to check for squeaky springs. You could lie down briefly to test the comfort level. All perfectly reasonable ways to test a newly assembled bed. But there was something in Alex's eyes, a playful glint that made my pulse quicken. "How exactly do you propose we test it?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Alex laughed. "Well, I was thinking we should make sure it can handle some weight and movement. You know, for safety purposes." He was still smiling, but I could see a hint of nervousness behind his confidence, like he wasn't entirely sure how I'd respond. "Safety first," I agreed with a grin, and before I could overthink it, I flopped backward onto the mattress. It was surprisingly comfortable, and I stretched out with a contented sigh. After a moment's hesitation, Alex joined me, careful to leave a respectful distance between us as we both stared up at the ceiling. "So far, so good," he said. "No immediate collapse. But we haven't really tested it properly," I pointed out. "A real test would involve movement. Jumping, for instance." I was surprised by my own boldness, but something about the situation, the hours we'd spent working together, the easy conversation, the undeniable attraction I was feeling, made me braver than usual. Alex propped himself up on one elbow, looking down at me with an amused expression. Are you suggesting we jump on my brand new bed like a couple of kids? For science, I said solemnly. How else will we know if our construction skills are up to par? A slow smile spread across his face. For science, he agreed, and then we were both standing on the mattress, holding hands for balance as we started to bounce experimentally. The bed creaked slightly but held firm as we jumped higher, laughing like we'd known each other for years instead of hours. It was ridiculous and childish and exactly what we needed to release the tension of the day. Mid-jump, Alex lost his balance and tumbled back onto the mattress, pulling me down with him. We landed in a heap of limbs and laughter, suddenly very close to each other. As our laughter subsided, I became acutely aware of his arm under my shoulders, the warmth of his body next to mine, and the way his eyes were focused intently on my face. I think the bed passes the test, he said softly. Almost, I replied, my heart racing. We should probably check if it can handle this too. And before I could lose my nerve, I leaned forward and kissed him. For a terrifying second, he didn't respond, and I was about to pull back and apologize profusely when his hand came up to cup my cheek and he kissed me back. It was gentle at first, tentative, but quickly deepened into something more urgent. His lips were soft, and he tasted faintly of coffee and mint. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing heavily. Definitely sturdy enough, Alex murmured, his voice slightly hoarse. Though we might need to conduct more thorough testing later. I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in months. I'm available for further scientific inquiry whenever you are. We stayed on the bed for hours after that, talking, kissing, and getting to know each other in ways I hadn't expected when I woke up that morning. We discovered we had the same favorite movie, debated the merits of various pizza toppings. He was pro-pineapple, I was vehemently against, and shared stories about our childhoods and dreams for the future. It turned out that Alex had noticed me right away too, but had been trying to play it cool since we were going to be living together. I was actually really nervous about moving in with someone I didn't know, he admitted as evening fell and the room grew dim. But when I saw you, I thought maybe it wouldn't be so bad after all. Even though I made you build your own bed on your first day? I teased. Especially because of that, he said, tracing patterns on my arm with his fingertips. I learned more about you in those 3 hours than I would have in weeks of normal roommate small talk. He had a point. There's something about working together on a tangible project that reveals character in ways that conversations alone can't. I'd seen that Alex was patient when frustrated, that he could laugh at himself, that he valued doing things right over doing them quickly. And he'd seen me problem solve, adapt to challenges, and apparently, make the first move when it counted. As the night wore on, we finally remembered the pizza Alex had promised as payment for my help. We ordered way too much food and ate it sitting cross-legged on his newly constructed bed, careful not to spill sauce on the fresh sheets. It was comfortable in a way that new relationships rarely are, like we'd skipped past the awkward early stages and landed somewhere much more genuine. So, Alex said as we finished the last slice, I have to ask, is this going to make living together weird? Because I really like you, but I also don't want to mess up our living situation if things don't work out. It was a fair question, and one I'd been thinking about too. Moving in together and then starting to date was definitely doing things in the wrong order according to conventional wisdom. But nothing about this day had been conventional. It might get complicated, I acknowledged. But I think we're both adults who can handle it. And honestly, I'd rather take the chance than spend the next year wondering what might have happened. Alex smiled, that same warm smile that had greeted me at the door hours earlier. I was hoping you'd say that, he said, leaning in for another kiss. That was 6 months ago now. The bed has held up remarkably well, despite our thorough and frequent testing. Living together while dating has had its challenges. It's hard to have a fight when you can't go home to cool off, and we had to learn each other's annoying habits alongside all the good stuff. But it's also meant that our relationship has developed a depth and honesty that might have taken much longer otherwise. Sometimes I think about how different things would be if Alex's bed had come with clearer instructions, or if I'd been too shy to help him build it, or if we'd both been more cautious about crossing the line from roommates to something more. It's strange how the most significant relationships can begin with something as mundane as assembling furniture. So if you're moving in with a new roommate anytime soon, my advice is simple: offer to help them build their bed. You never know where it might lead. In my case, it led to the best relationship I've ever had, all because a set of poorly written instructions forced us to work together, laugh together, and eventually fall for each other. And that's a story worth telling, don't you think? Total_char_count, 17,768.